I'm going to start off by introducing our panel. To my left, I have Alisha Wright. Alisha is 17 years old. She's come down from Scotland. She's currently in her final year at high school. She's very interested in politics, and this is further enhanced by, of course, the recent referendum in Scotland over the independence question, where Alisha voted. Mita Desai is a social policy graduate. She's currently developing the curriculum for the National Citizenship Service, the challenge and chair of the British Youth Council. She was an ambassador for Britain in the 2009 European Youth Exchange Programme. On to my right, we have Rania Ramli. Rania is only 16 years old, so she's our youngest panellist tonight. Politics and engaging young people in democracy is one of Rania's main passions in life. She's involved with this through her work as a vice chair of the Youth Advisory Board for Ballot. She's also a Newham youth councillor and a youth officer for her local political party. And further to my right, Emily Thornberry. Emily is the MP for this constituency, Islington South and Finsbury, and has been since 2005. She's a member of the Labour Party, and the Labour Party have declared recently that lowering the voting age to 16 is one of the cornerstones of their plan for constitutional reform. We're going to kick this off by asking the question, when should we as a society decide at what age somebody is able to vote? What makes a voter worthy of our trust as a society in their ability to vote?
When you grant the vote to someone, you grant this idea of responsibility with them. So I think what you really have to think about is, do young people have that responsibility? Are these people competent? Are they able to look at and make an informed decision? When we get to 16, we can trust that the vast majority will have a level of understanding. They may not be, avid politicians, but they have a level of understanding to make an informed decision out with the reach of their parents and really think about things for themselves when you get to that age.
16, 17-year-olds are asked to make massive life decisions about what they'll probably do for the rest of their life. We use our mind as 16 and 17-year-olds. We study hard things, and that cognitive ability is not absent at that age. And you're finding out information, and what we say as the British Youth Council and what the Labour Party have also said, as well as the Liberal Democrats, is that if 16, 17-year-olds were given the vote, it'd come with political education. And when you're in that mind space, you're able to think about issues and process them deeply, as opposed to on a superficial level, because once you're at the age of 18, you have to think about, where am I going to live, what am I doing, all those other kind of pressures. Whereas when you're at a younger age, you're able to process politics in a deeper way.
At 16, you are given all these responsibilities, and I think that should come with the vote. I think it's a right. But then I also think we need to reconsider what politics is. Politics isn't just memorising manifestos and knowing different ideologies. I think politics is knowing about the decisions that are made in Parliament and how they implement your life. At 16, you can get married, you can have a child, come out of formal education. And I think these are very big decisions. It's quite patronising to say you can make these decisions, but you can't vote for who your local MP is.
In the 1950s, more than 80% of people voted, and now it's down to 50, 60%. And the people who don't vote particularly are young people. Politicians are only people. We reflect the views of those who show up. So if youngsters don't show up at the polling station, they don't count. And older people vote, and so therefore they influence politicians much more. And it seems to me that introducing votes at 16 alongside a proper citizenship programme would actually get a younger generation involved in voting, and they should be voting because they should be mad. The older generation has eaten all the fish, is warming up the planet, has taken all the pension funds, is living in all the homes. It's really difficult for you guys to find somewhere to live. It's really difficult for you guys to find a permanent job. Why aren't you angry? You should be given the vote, and you should be given an opportunity to express that anger.
But I do want to have a few audience contributions. Is 16 the right age? Our panellists have all kind of come down on the side of agreeing that maybe lowering the voter age would be a positive thing. What do you think?
I'm just really worried about older people, or the older generation thinking, you can't trust us. How do we sort of make them understand that we can trust 16 to 17-year-olds?
Well, we've been campaigning about this since 1998, and initially when we went to Parliament we were like, hey, this is a great idea. They were like, great, no one cares. And we got completely shut down. We owe it to the young people of then who were like, okay, cool, but we're going to keep on campaigning. Now we have 2 major political parties signed up to it. I think just capturing that energy and keep pushing it, and also just turning the debate around. We know that young people right now are interested in issues and solving problems problems, and we need to get politicians connecting their politics back to issues again. I think this idea of like, how can we get more young people voting or get politicians to trust us, we should actually be saying, politicians, how can we trust you?
You know, there's youth parliaments across the nation, and there's some really, really active political organisations, and I think there just isn't enough focus on that. Most people don't know about it, and unless you're in a school environment. And I think that's really a main reason as to why lowering the votes to 16 is a good idea, in that the 16 and 17-year-olds that are granted the vote are in school environment where everyone's discussing an issue, even if they have completely different views, which just makes things even better.
Promoting the good that people do, like the UK Youth Parliament and everything that British Youth Council does, is amazing, but it's not in the news enough. It's more just the crime and the bad things that young people do. And I think that needs to be changed. We need to change the culture first before we try and reform the political system.
I just wondered if the panel could comment on whether they think that 16 is just as arbitrary as 18 as an age at which to acquire the vote.
I don't think 16 is an arbitrary age. I think it's a logical age in that it follows many of the laws that already exist. It was initially only granted to the aristocracy, and then women finally got the vote. And I think votes at 16 comes as another slow-moving change, and it's just the evolution of society as we see people becoming more and more active.
I just want to quote a New Scientist article that came out on the 14th of October called "Let Science Decide the Voting Age." People reach various kinds of maturity between the ages of roughly 15 and 22, and it's all based on cold cognition. So therefore, I do agree that 16 is an arbitrary age, and I think it should be lower.
We want to look a bit at the 18 to 24 age group. In the 2010 general election, we saw a 44% turnout roughly among the younger voters, 18 to 24, as opposed to 65% among the older population. We just wanted to pose the question why you think this age group has been so reluctant to utilise their democratic power. And do you really think that giving votes to a lower age group would make any difference to this?
The idea of lowering voting and then engaging the 18 to 24-year-old category is very linked, because by lowering the voting age, we're not just giving 16-year-olds a vote, but also sending out the message that at 16 and as young people, politicians want to listen to you and your voice is worth listening to. If you start voting from a younger age, you're more likely to vote later on. Both issues are linked, and I think by lowering the voting age, we will in time also increase the turnout for 18 to 24-year-olds.
I went round all my primary schools a few years ago and talked to 10-year-olds about Parliament. Again, on election days, I quite often met mums who were saying, my son said I had to come out and vote. And it was almost as though just engaging 10-year-olds and getting a sort of an interest in politics in the home can be a positive thing by itself.
If we really engage in politics at a really young age and get people to think about it not in the idea of reading the newspaper and reading manifestos as I read earlier, but really thinking about big issues.
We've recently had something called Make Your Mark, where we have a ballot of 10 issues. The UK Youth Parliament then disseminate it to other young people, and we got 876,000 young people signed up. What does that tell us? Is that they are interested in issues. What we want is for politicians to kind of inform them that politics is so linked to these issues.
I mean, I appreciate that we're in a culture which, we're interested in personalities and all that sort of thing. And politics is really not. It really should be about issues. And if we just talk about, how nasty was David Cameron at PMQs, how clever was Ed Miliband at Prime Minister's Questions, it takes politics away from people. Because if it's just about them and what they look like and what they say and how they walk and how they talk and how many children they've got, then it's not about us. Whereas issues are about us. I think young people are interested in issues, and what they don't get is how it is that issues translate into party politics.
It comes back to Rania's point about the media, it's often driven by...
something we got told, so the UK Youth Parliament took over the House of Commons, as you know, on last Friday, and we took this out to some media platforms, but they said, sorry, we're not going to report it because it's not newsworthy. We get newsworthy things on the front page which don't relate to issues. I think it is also changing through the power of social media, and through you guys tweeting today and sharing this debate, we're helping to change those things back to issues.
Thanks, Mita. And I do want to hand over again for some audience participation why 18 to 24-year-olds have been so disengaged from politics.
Good point about the personalities. I think it's true, we need to make it issues focused, but if you look at the two of the most popular but talked about people is Farage and Boris Johnson, and that's because they don't toe the party line. They're prone to gaffes. Do you think that we need more personalities in politics to engage people rather than the stereotypical old big-bellied white man sitting in Parliament falling asleep in the back row of the Lords?
When young people look at Parliament, they don't see young people. I know, and politicians are never young. The only way to get to that stage is by engaging young people, and I think that's the pinnacle. That's what we want to achieve in the future. We want 25-year-olds to be MPs.
I think that our current mayor is an anti-politics politician. I accept that. I think that many people voted for him because he made them laugh. But what's he achieved? They are the kind of the logical extension of this idea about politics not being about issues but being about personalities, and it's kind of just taking it to the most extreme.
The question about 18 to 24-year-olds not voting, I'm in that age bracket, and I can see from my friends that they just feel really disillusioned by politics. The people representing them don't really represent them. They're white, they're middle class. Even if they do vote, the promises are broken. Like the recent government with tuition fees, they said they weren't going to make them rise. They did it triple.
Also, for me personally, as someone who wants to go into politics and become an MP, I think it's not seeing that and saying, okay, I don't see people like me, and I'm going to be that person. And it's giving young people, that motivation, that determination to say, yes, I can do it. And as someone who doesn't come from a middle class background, I also think that we need to break down those barriers and take away this idea that you have to have gone to Eton and Oxford to get into Parliament. I think it's so much more than that. You have to be able to relate to young people. You have to be able to relate to society in general and know what it's like to live in Britain. And I think that a lot of young politicians do not necessarily know that, and that's something we need to change.
It's very important that politicians are responsible in terms of not over-promising in Parliament at the moment. There's this bill about, modern slavery. So they're going to get rid of modern slavery. So if you were to read that, you go, oh, they got rid of slavery. Good for them. No, they haven't. If you bring people on, we can do this and we can do that, and then you don't, then clearly people have trusted you and won't trust you again. You have to just stand back and measure what it is that politicians say. And is it an overpromise? Is one side being allowed to paint their campaign in bright colours and the other one having to paint in shades of grey?
Personally, I think the voting age should be lowered, but actually I'd much rather parties were saying, if we win the next general election, we will make it compulsory to have political education in the national curriculum. I think that's a much more important thing. I think it's crazy that at school you learn to read and write and how to count and to speak foreign languages and cook and clean, but you don't learn about politics.
I was quite shocked to learn that you guys don't have political education as a compulsory thing, because growing up in Scotland, it is compulsory for us. I think a big part of seeing 16 and 17-year-olds get the vote was that we had, throughout school, there was some sort of level of understanding that we'd been given to it, and it was openly discussed in schools.
People are frustrated and they don't feel like their political parties represent them. How do we get them to represent them? Well, it's actually through having a better formed education system, because currently there are one type of narrative which you're told by the media. The politicians therefore then respond to that one narrative, which then leads to policies based on that narrative. That's not based on logic, not based on lots of different arguments. What we need is that political education saying that there are different types of economies. There are other economic theories that also should be considered into voting. I think that what that then happens is it creates politicians who are then able to have better diversity in terms of how they then form their policies. So through having education, it kind of solves those other issues.
We're going to throw it over to the audience again. Of those of you who have reached voting age, how many of you voted as soon as you came of age? When you were 16 or 17, would you have wanted the vote? And do you think that you would have trusted your 16 and 17-year-old self to use the vote wisely?
I did vote as soon as I got the right to vote, and I probably would have trusted my 16-year-old self on national elections. But I think there's an interesting also point to think about local elections, because I think even now I don't fully understand how local elections work, and I think there's a whole other side about whether we should be getting kind of the youth vote engaged locally as well as nationally.
I found when I moved away from home to come to London for university, I actually didn't feel like I had a belonging here in London, so I never bothered to register on the electoral roll here because I didn't feel invested in it, and I think that affects local elections.
I did vote when I turned 18, and I voted in every election, the police commission one, yeah. Voted in all of them.
Oh, congratulations, that's great, because not many people do.
At 15, me and my family had a big issue with our house, and then my dad said, we'll go along to our local MP, and this was the first time I was actually involved in politics, physically. So at that age, I started to read more and more about politics. So at 16, I would have said, yeah, I could have voted because I was aware. But I know many of my friends weren't.
I think when I was 16, if I had voted, my political views would have been hugely influenced by my parents because of my lack of education. You know, I would have really struggled to move away at all from what they taught me about politics and my kind of received opinions. And I wonder, is there any sense in which you think that voters who are 16, who are maybe more likely to be living at home with their parents, are more likely to be influenced by things like that?
If you do make it part of the curriculum, people will bring it home with them, and those families who don't vote, whatever age they are, they will know things about it and they will be educated themselves, whether the children are motivated or the parents are motivated.
Thank you very much. So would anyone like to take on those questions or any other comments that we've had?
Some families who are more politically aware, their parents' influence will impact how they vote. But I think it's worth that sacrifice and worth that to gain something we have to give some. So I think it's worth a few young people being influenced by their parents for the majority of young people to be engaged.
Often when they come to our conventions, they don't come to do with politics, they don't even have an opinion. Their opinions form based on other discussions and arguments, and once they've heard them, they then weigh them up and then get involved.
We're going to come on to talk directly to Alisha now about her experience in the Scottish referendum. How well informed did you think you and your peers were in having the right information and being able to make a truly informed decision?
I was quite politically informed, but what I was impressed at was that given this opportunity, the fact that young people became politically informed, we've not given young people the chance. And I think what I saw from the Scottish referendum was that as soon as 16 and 17-year-olds were given the chance to vote on something they really cared about and something that really directly affected their lives, suddenly interest was sparked. They came with these logical and thorough and researched arguments to present to you. Many of the older generations were voting on the referendum based on things like job security and pensions and things that directly affected them. But the young people, specifically 16 to 18s, haven't quite had that experience. But that's not to say that they hadn't had different experiences. That young people were looking at things, what's best for my country. I felt that they didn't have this personal attachment to things, and they really went, this is going to be my future, so I'm going to look towards what will happen to me, not what I've already got, but what will happen to me in the future. That's a perspective that 16 to 18-year-olds can really bring. The government devolved this power to young people. But what they essentially said was 16 and 17-year-olds can vote in one of the most important democratic decisions you're going to make. But you can't vote in a local council election because obviously those things, don't stay on the same political wavelength.
I would really like to raise how many countries already have the voting age between 16 and 18 as well. I think there's a lot of examples out there and a lot of research that we can look at.
And what was actually seen in Austria was that the turnout between 16 and 18-year-olds was higher than that of 18 to 24-year-olds in an environment where you're surrounded by people who may not be politically engaged, but you're surrounded by this ability to make those ideas and bounce comments off of each other.
We are going to come and look towards the future, what you see the future holds.
With my work with Ballot and getting young people registered to vote, I think that's the first step, because if you're registered, political parties are going to engage with you through canvassing, and when they go out, they've got you on their list.
Getting young people to appreciate the vote and how important it is, and with that, the role of spoiling your ballot paper. The fact that you have to vote, even if you're not voting for anyone, you can still go and make your mark.
And just bringing really engagement in politics in the classroom, I think, is really the way forward. Just getting people engaged throughout, debating, public speaking.
It's got to go to education. You can talk about lowering the vote, but if you don't bring education with it, then it's a futile gesture.
What I see for the future is politics being about people and your experiences, and And I envision a future where votes at 16 with political education enables that to happen.
For the future, I would like to see positive engagement from politicians and the media of young people that are already involved in politics. But young people need to see them so they see, oh, we are respected, people do value our opinion, maybe I should get involved.
I've been really moved by today. I think it has been a really strong testament for why it is that we should move the voting age. And I think there is something just so strong about the idea of someone at the beginning of their life being able to vote about their future. It strips everything back, to what politics ought to be about.